All right, everyone, we just got the new patch inside the game, and there are actually a very, very large amount of changes that are, you could say, like bug fixes, but are huge for impacting the game that were not represented in the patch notes. We're going to be talking about the boss HP and the XP buffs, which are huge, but I first want to start off with the changes here that weren't really talked about. There were a lot of different ones, but the one I want to focus on today is the barber. Okay, as we've all known, the barber has kind of just absolutely disgustingly taken over a lot of the builds in the game, and also has screwed over a lot of builds. And one of the biggest things for the rogue, for example, was things like your puncture giving you vulnerability did not really work if you were critting. Things like siphoning strikes, if you decided to use it, didn't really work. Things like your exposure, getting your trap cooldowns reset, didn't work. However, all of these things seem to work now with the barber. Same with even using poison imbuement with the barber. So with this change, this may be going back to what I mentioned earlier, which is now we could redo all of our builds because it works with the barber, so you can actually make strong builds. One of the biggest things actually was the exploit glyph, giving you the vulnerability on hit. Where is it? There we go. Vulnerability on hit, which wasn't working with the barber before. So let me go ahead and just jump into game and show you an example of this. So we have a couple of hornets here. Everyone loves hornets, and if we here, let me just clear out some of these hornets. I don't just die because we aren't really on a super easy nightmare dungeon here. But what you'll notice is we apply that vulnerable even though we're critting. You see how I exploded the hornet there and I had a couple hits? You can see there we did not actually hit any base non-crits with that ability, and yet we still applied the vulnerable. That is extremely different from what it was before and changes your builds entirely. So if you're running a build, let's say, and I don't know, for myself or anyone that mentioned, yeah, you can't run this because it doesn't work with the barber, scrap all of that and reassess your builds. Now, I'm not sure every skill that this works / doesn't work with. I've only tested for the rogue at the current moment, but from my testing, as I mentioned, exposure seems to work, your poison imbuement seems to work, your puncture seems to work, as I showed you just now, your siphoning strikes seem to work, and anything like you typically would normally use and expect it to work with the barber still continues to work, which is really, really nice. Something that's going to absolutely want to change your builds, or at least I am going to be changing my builds and putting out new ones for you all, because again, this totally changes the landscape for the rogue. With that said, though, we got to talk about the XP buffs and the density buffs. So as we know, with the new patch, we did get a lot of buffs to the monster HP and also density, which in my opinion are the two most important changes inside the game, because, well, they're basically what you're doing for 90% of the game is killing off enemies in dungeons. So what did the changes do? Are we really seeing a huge increase in monster density? Absolutely, we are seeing a massive one. As I go ahead and run this one behind me, you'll see a huge increase in monster density across basically every nightmare dungeon that I farm. My favorites like Surat's Lair, Older's Cave are even better than before, despite already being excellent comparatively to its counterparts. Crafting sigils also, by the way, for those of you that didn't know, your sigils can no longer have some really atrocious affixes on them now. So that's really, really nice, which makes farming even better because you're not running, trash affixes if you don't have a ton of sigil powder, although most people probably do. And this is huge. This is absolutely massive for the game, because what this correlates to is roughly about a 34% XP increase. That's an average over like the last 5 runs that I've done. Beforehand with my Surat's Lair and Older's Caves, I would reach on as a solo player around 24 million XP per hour, which is not bad. It's definitely a solid amount. Again, if you're really grinding, that's my average amount. That's like when I'm just kind of grinding and not really like super try harding. If I'm in a group, I'll get 37 million, so far superior. And with the 20 to 30 or 34% increase, but it can be about 20% depending on how hard you're trying. Well, you're going to see that, and you're going to get 27 million XP, 28, 29 million XP per hour solo. And if you're in a group, I mean, you're looking at over 45 million XP per hour in your dungeons, which is a huge increase. So that's really, really nice. As for boss monster HP, honestly, it hasn't really affected my farming all that much. You know, my dungeons that have those bosses, things like the Surratt's Lair, for example. Older's Cave doesn't really have a big boss fight, so I was wondering if Older's Cave is going to be the clear favorite now, because Surratt's Lair does have that, you know, end boss, and with the increased in boss HP, well, is it going to just drastically slow you down? Not really. It doesn't really change much as far as I've seen. You know, it is increased by that double HP, which is pretty intense if you are running those at least like tier 46s, I believe. So if you're running anything higher than tier 46, you're going to expect double or more than double HP on those bosses. Despite that, well, with the changes to the barber, in fact, I find that I'm just stronger. So, like, ironically, they kind of buffed every build with the barber changes. And because of that, I'm just stronger. Therefore, the bosses actually are easier than they were before. So that's a little bit funny. But in terms of like actual, you know, whether or not you are going to be killing the bosses, well, I haven't noticed any, you know, reward difference. So if you wanted to skip the bosses, that's totally fine. But a lot of people, you know, kill the bosses just because they don't want to specifically target those nightmare sigils without them. And well, they got to finish it to get those glyph XPs. So I wouldn't worry about it. Boss monster HP doesn't seem to be too big of an issue. When you start to scale up, perhaps I'll notice more of a difference. If you start doing tier 80s, tier 90s, I have seen a couple of those, and they seem to be quite significant. But if you're just speed farming, you know, your classics, then I really wouldn't worry too much about your boss monster HP being too high, because it didn't really change all that much. Other than that, you know, pretty solid patch. Honestly, I was excited about the density changes. It makes the game a lot more fun. I know some people already commented that they've been having a lot more fun with the game, and that's me. You know, I've been enjoying the pace of the game a lot better, and well, it's always nice to be rewarded a little bit more than what we were getting before. And honestly, the thing that's most exciting to me, it's not even in the patch notes, is the barber changes, because this unlocks a lot of the builds. And I was kind of disappointed in a lot of builds, because, for example, like the trapper build with exposure, resetting your traps, this type of build was really popular. Or even like running poison imbuement, right? That's super popular for a lot of, you know, single target damage builds. But if you're running a single target damage build, well, you're not farming as well, so people were running the barber, and now you miss out on poison imbuement, or you miss out on the barber if you're running that poison imbuement, which kind of sucks. So I'm really glad that they changed that, because, well, this opens the floor for a lot of different builds going forward, and I'm excited to see exactly how this changes. But other than that, you know, just excited to get back into the game and grind a little bit. But hopefully we'll see a lot more, you know, changes like this going forward, because I do think that they are making some good progress. They're making some good strides towards improving the game. But let me know what your thoughts are on the patch so far, and whether or not you've been having some fun. Let me know if you found out anything that might be hidden. I've heard some things about enchanting being, you know, hidden, patched, and such, but the biggest one certainly is the barber. So make sure to test your build, because it could be completely different if you're using it. See you for the next one.